Good morning on a Wednesday. It seems a bit colder this morning. There's Lucky. Ning came with us. He's gone off with a white dog. I think it must be a female. He went bounding after her, full of joy. So it must be a female. Yeah, it's cloudy today. Okay, we're here again. Actually, I had a pretty unproductive day yesterday. Came here, did my vlog, got home. None of the files would open. Total wasted journey. Never mind. Stuff happens, eh? Stuff happens. Right. So, quick swig of water. Update. Day 3 of No Kratom. The first night I encountered something that's called restless leg syndrome. You can't keep still when you try to sleep. You just can't keep still. So I encountered that on night 1. Ooh, yeah, very strange. After an hour, I got up and did some work for about 3 or 4 hours, and then I managed to sleep. Other than that, no real cravings, nothing like that. Haven't really thought much about it. Drank loads of water. I drink loads of water every day because drinking my tea, I was probably drinking 1.5 liters of water a day. So I got to keep that going. Last night, restless leg syndrome again, only this time I cracked it. I got into a meditative state and I just imagined my body being so heavy and heavier and heavier. And then I didn't want to move my body anymore. That worked pretty well. Kratom will arrive today. I've ordered a ton, well, not literally a ton, but I've ordered from 4 different people. So that will be today sometime. So today's vlog, which I actually did yesterday, but I'm doing it again today, was just an idea I had where I will, off the cuff, see what I can remember, highlights of my traveling days. Let's put it that way. The first one that springs to mind was the second time, I think, I travelled from London to Athens on a train. £62 the ticket was, and you had to change trains quite often. I took that train down to Athens 3 times, but never ever took the train back. Always hitchhiked back. So, this particular train journey, I think I'm somewhere in Italy or Yugoslavia. And I've got a Walkman, you know, and I've got my backpack and I'm listening to music and everything's hunky-dory. I'm really excited about the trip. And I had an ounce of really good black hash and some tobacco, you know, so I rolled a joint. And then I found a carriage on this train where there's just 2 people inside it, 2 locals. So I put my backpack above my seat and I sit opposite these 2 locals, father and son, farmers. So we leave the station and traddle-a-tat, you know, we're going along, it's a slow train. And it's just fields, we're just going through fields. And the father, it was father and son. The father was asleep. The son would have been about 16 or 17. And he's just sitting there, you know, looking at me and smiling, and we're going along, and I'm listening to my music, and I thought, oh, I'll spark up, you know. I'm sure it'll be okay. So I lit my joint, and I'm sitting there smoking it, and the boy's looking at me, and he's looking at the joint, and he points to himself, you know. Ah, okay, he wants a hit. So I gave it to him, and he took 2 or 3 hits off it. And a few minutes went by, and he took another couple of hits off it, and I put it out then. I think we'd smoked about half. I put it out, put it away, and I'm just sitting there listening to music and looking outside. And then I look round and I look at him, and oh my God, he's green. He's gone green, and his head is leaning against his father's shoulder like that. And I'm like, oh my God, this kid's probably never ever smoked marijuana in his life. And I've just given him some really good hash, you know. So I panicked. I got my backpack together and I got the hell out of there, and I think I went 4 carriages down. And I don't know whatever happened there, but I just wanted to get away from that situation. Other ones, let me see. Yes, I was traveling with a friend in a car, in a van actually, in London. My friend was a satellite TV engineer, and I had nothing to do on this particular day. So I went with him as like an assistant companion as he went and did his service calls around London, you know. And we're both smoking during the day. So it's early afternoon, we're somewhere in southeast London, southeast 19, and neither of us knew this area. And he's given me the paperwork with the address of the place that we're looking for. And we get around the corner and there's a shopping precinct. So he pulls into the shopping precinct, he says, go and ask in one of these shops. Okay. So I get out with the bit of paper, walk straight into this shop. I can see a woman standing at a counter, and I go up to her and I said, excuse me, do you know where this is? And she looked at it and she said, oh, you're here at last then. Okay, yes, I'll tell the manager. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, I'm looking for this place here. And I pointed to the address. She said, yes, that's us. Ooh. I went outside and I said to him, boy, you're not going to believe this. And he didn't. But yeah, I'd asked in the exact place we were actually looking to go. So that was an interesting one. Things that spring to mind. I had a friend, it was actually the same satellite TV engineer friend. And he's been married for a couple of years. He was a little bit older than me, but we used to like to do LSD together, you know. So I'm round his house one day. I think it might have been a Friday or a Saturday night, early evening. And it's in the summer. And we'd just done these, all 3 of us, him, his wife and me, we'd just done these blotters. And he suddenly gets up and he says, I've got to go somewhere. I'll be back in about 45 minutes. You just hang out, you know. Yeah, no probs. Off he goes. He has a motorcycle, you know, off he goes. So I'm sitting there and I think we're listening to music and his wife's in the lounge, and suddenly she's got up and gone out of the room. And I paid no attention to this at all, you know. Everything's hunky-dory, and then she's just come back into the room and she stood in front of me and she just starts to take all her clothes off. And I'm like, Oh my God. And I'm just looking at a look of sheer horror on my face. And then I hear him laughing. He's behind the door and he sticks his head round the door and he's laughing his head off. Thought I'd get you with that one, he said. I won't tell you how the evening ended, but it wasn't a disaster. Other things I can remember. Yes, I can remember one of my worst experiences. I'm with an English guy that I met out in Crete, and I've decided I want to go home. It's probably about April. I want to go home. I've got about $9 in my pocket and a few euros. And I decide I'm going to go home and I'll hitchhike. So this English guy decides to come with me. Ooh, so we had a pretty eventful trip. By the time we get to Germany, we're about a week into the trip. We spent most of our money. And we ended up having to walk along about a 12-kilometer stretch of the Autobahn, where you're not supposed to hitchhike. And it was pouring down with rain. And we'd got so wet that we thought, no, we'll just keep walking till we find a rest stop station. That's what we were after. So we walked for 12 kilometers, and yes, we finally found it, and we got there and we're drenched. So we spent the night in the underpass, in the concrete underpass. We're all soaking wet. Our sleeping bags are soaking wet. Everything in our backpacks is soaking wet. And this guy next to me, he's shivering and he's crying, and I'm like, look, it's okay, it will work out, don't worry about it. And I had enough money in the morning for 2 coffees. So I'm with him in the morning. We've just come outside of the concrete underpass and there's a stream there. So I squat down and I take out the cigarette packet, and there's only 8 left, I think, and I took one out and I lit it and I gave the packet to him. And he fumbled and dropped it, and it went straight into the water and it flew down the stream. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, what are we going to do? And I said, we'll be all right, don't worry about it. I said, I'm going to go and check out the car park, the lorry park. That's where we want to go. You stay here and guard the gear, the backpacks. So I wandered off. About 6:30 in the morning, now just becoming light, and I'm looking at all the trucks. All the drivers sleep in their trucks, so they cover the curtains, in the cab. But they're starting to wake up, and I'm looking at them all, and I see one at the back. And the guy's outside and he's cleaning his wing mirrors and stuff. And I went, hey, okay? He says, yeah, not so bad, mate, Londoner. Where you going? So I said, well, actually, I want to go back to the UK. Oh, well, you lucked out today then, mate, because that's where I'm going. I'll take you all the way. And I'm like, really? Yep. Oh, my God. And I said, look, I got a friend. Yeah, bring him too. I can take the 2 of you. I said, oh, wow. Thank you so much. I said, I'll be here in a minute. So I've gone back to the young guy, and we're sitting there by the backpacks, and he's still cold and wet. I said, what do you want, the good news or the good news? He said, the good news. I said, well, I've got us a lift. Oh, that's great. How far will he take us? I said, well, he'll take us to your front door, which is where we're going to stay, isn't it? And he looked at me, he says, are you serious? I said, yep. So not only did this driver take us to his front door, my friend's front door in Staines, outside of London, he also smuggled us onto the ferry in his sleeper, bought us a breakfast, bought us 200 cigarettes each, and was a real gentleman. yeah, what an amazing guy he was. I often wonder what happened to him. I could never repay him, but I repaid someone else. Yeah, that was a really lucky day, that, because we were both dead on our feet. And I'd heard of foreigners being stuck at Calais because they didn't have the ferry fee home, you know, and that you could be stuck there for days until you find a truck driver that would be prepared to smuggle you on, you know. But we really lucked out. Yeah, that was a good situation. Trying to think of others now. Oh, yeah. The concert, the Genesis concert. I think me and a friend of mine, we went to a Genesis concert in Nebworth. And we had this idea that we would take as much booze as we could carry because we didn't have much in the way of drugs, but we knew we could barter. So we took loads of white wine and some spirits in backpacks, you know, beer, yeah, we did really well, and we did a load of acid on the last night of the concert when Genesis played and everything, and it was great. And then at about, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning, I mean, this concert had been on the side of a hill, a big meadow, you know, and there were hundreds of thousands of people were there. So there were fires everywhere, and people were just sitting around, you know. The show had finished. And so me and my buddy, we're sitting about, I don't know, 30 feet from a fire. And there's 3 girls walking around picking up stuff that they can put on the fire. And we're just sat there, you know, tripping we are. And the girl, she's about 10 feet away from me, and she picks up a white envelope off the ground, and she says, "To Paul." "Who's Paul?" And I looked at her and I said, "I'm Paul." So she just came over and gave me this envelope, and then she carried on picking up stuff. And my friend looked at me, and I looked at him. He said, "Open it then." So I opened it, and I pulled out a birthday card. And when I opened it, £10 dropped on the floor, a £10 note, and it said, "To Paul, happy birthday," from, I don't know who it was. And I picked up the money, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I said, "Did that just happen?" He said, "Yeah, it did, it just happened." What are the odds? The odds of somebody saying, you know, "Who's Paul?" right next to a pool, and for there to be money in it. I shared a flat in England in the mid-70s with 2 guys. One was called Jack. He was a nice guy, liked to smoke weed, liked to drink. He was a pleasant enough guy, and he worked on the roads, I think. And the other guy was a guy called Richard, and he was very straight. He was a supermarket manager, very clean-cut young man, you know, wore a suit to work. And he'd just been through a divorce about 4 or 5 months previous. We didn't know him, but he applied to an ad to share the place, so he was in there, you know. So anyway, this apartment was in a big country house, and downstairs was the kitchen. That's how you got in. And at the back of the kitchen, there was a door and there was a staircase, and then the rest of the apartment was upstairs. We had 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a lounge upstairs. So one particular morning, must have been about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, as I always do, you know. The first thing I normally do is spark up a cigarette when I wake up. Well, that's what I used to do then. Doesn't matter where I am, what I'm doing, I would just go for my cigarettes. So I find my cigarettes, but I've got no lighter. I find one lighter in the room, but it doesn't work. So I went into the lounge. Can't find a lighter in the lounge. There's usually a box of matches, but I couldn't find the box of matches either. So I went into Jack's bedroom and I started fumbling around in there, and he's a smoker. And you know, I couldn't find a lighter that worked. So didn't think much of it. Went and had a pee and decided to go down into the kitchen where I knew I could get a light because we have a gas cooker down there. As I start to go down the stairs to the kitchen, I can smell the gas. It's natural gas, and the smell, oh my God. I get down there, I open the door, and there is Richard laying on the floor with his head in the oven. The oven is turned full on. The whole room reeks of it. Of course, I know immediately that he's not dead because natural gas is not toxic. But he's just, I mean, if I'd have found a lighter upstairs, that would have been it. It just would have. The whole place would have gone up. And so I opened the door, opened the window, we got him out, I got Jack up, we woke him up with some water. And he was very, very ashamed and felt terrible, and I think the cops took him away, and I think he got sectioned under the Mental Health Act for his own protection. But he nearly took me and Jack with him. And I often think back to that day and think, I could never remember a day when I didn't have a lighter. I could not. And yet that morning, I couldn't find one anywhere. Maybe somebody was looking out for me, eh? It's very possible. Other things that come to mind. Yes, I have a story that it's actually one of the craziest things I ever did. I was on a bus going from Eilat to Cairo. I'd just been ripped off, so I didn't have a lot of money, and didn't know what I was going to do. So I'm on this bus, and there's two Kiwi girls, and they're sitting in front of me, and you know, they're gap year students, I can see that, you know, quite intellectual girls, probably 20, 21, maybe a bit younger. And they start talking to me, you know, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to Cairo, like you know, what are you going to do in Cairo? I said, I don't know yet. So they keep asking me these questions, and then one of the girls looks at me and she says, so, let me see if I've got this right then. You've got no money, you don't know anybody in Cairo, you've got no air ticket home, you've got no insurance. That's insane. And I don't know to this day why I did it. I just looked at it, I said, no, that's not insane. This is insane. And I stood up, walked to the front of the bus. There was only about 8 people on the bus, an air-conditioned coach, you know, going to go like 900 kilometers through the desert to Cairo. Stop the bus. The driver looks at me and says, what do you mean stop the bus? We have the toilet on the bus. I said, no. I want you to stop the bus here, and I want to get my backpack out from underneath the bus, and then I just get out here and you go on. And the driver, he looked at me as though I was crazy, you know. He said, you know, there might be 3 other cars along this road all day, and there's nothing here. And I said, no, I want to get out. I want to get off. And the girls are trying to persuade me not to. One gave me a bottle of water. One gave me half a packet of cigarettes, and I'll never forget looking at their faces as the bus pulled away. They're looking out of the back window at me. And I saw this bus disappear down this road. And I'm sitting under the one palm tree that there is there. And it looks like a scene out of Mars, you know, red clay, mountains and rocks, and this black tarmac road that's as straight as a die. And I watch the bus until it disappears, and I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? You've gone too far this time. And I had visions of my mother getting a letter from the British Embassy. Well, some bones were found in the Negev desert, and we think it might be your son because his passport was also there. I wasn't prepared for it. I think I had $17 in my pocket. I had a couple of bottles of water, no food at all. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a flashlight. I had a space blanket because it was freezing at night. And spent one night there. Never saw a soul, never saw a thing, pitch black. Woke up in the morning, I'm having a cigarette and drinking my water, and suddenly I see these two guys on camels. And they came over to me. And you can't see anything except their eyes, you know. And they can't speak my language and I can't speak their language. And they circled me slowly, both of them. And I didn't feel threatened or scared. You know, I'm just sitting there with my backpack. And one of them threw something off the camel and it landed right in front of me, and it was a tin of Libby's peaches. And I looked at this and I thought, this is crazy. And then they rode off, but they left this tin of peaches there. So I got my knife out and I opened the peaches and I ate the peaches and drank the juice, and I thought that was great, you know. And about 2 hours later they came back. But they came back with a few other guys, and one of them was dressed all in white, and he got off his camel and he looked at me, he says, "You got a light, mate?" And he spoke perfect Cockney English. I'm like, yeah, he says, "I learnt my English from another guy a couple of years ago, came through here and he stayed with us Bedouins. And they were really nice people." And I ended up, I think, spending 2 months with them, traveling around the desert, selling stuff to the settlements. And they taught me so much about living in the desert. And finally, they took me back to the place where they'd found me, left me there, and I got on the same bus with the same driver, not the same passengers. He thought it was a miracle. And I went on to Cairo and had some other amazing adventures. So yeah, that was, I never did anything really crazy after that, because I knew that I was really pushing it there. And I didn't plan to do it. I don't know where the thought came from for me to get off that bus. Sheer lunacy. Yes. Not one of my better decisions. But I did live to tell the tale, eh? I did indeed. I did indeed. I can remember being on the island of Crete, and I went to sleep the side of a port. It was just a concrete wall. And I got my sleeping bag out and I just went to sleep there with using my backpack as a pillow. And I don't know what time in the morning it was, but I was woken by this god-awful loud foghorn. It must have been like 200 decibels. Holy shit, I jumped out of my skin. And in the night, right next to me was this Greek destroyer. It somehow had managed to dock in the middle of the night because it wasn't there when I went to sleep. And right next to me it was. I was only a foot from the edge of this concrete wall, and then there was this huge battleship. God, that frightened the life out of me. Yes. I remember a very strange experience. I got a lift from a British truck driver at the Yugoslavian border going back to England, and he was a nice guy, and he had to pick some furniture up in Yugoslavia, but I'd sleep in his empty trailer. And so we're on our way to this place, and we stopped at this, on the side of the road, right out in the countryside, in a lay-by. And I'd slept in the trailer, you know, in my sleeping bag. 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up, opened the back door, got out, had a pee, and I'm looking at this field. It's just a field, and it's all wet. It's been raining all night, just about daylight. And surrounding the field was forest, you know. It's a big square field. And I'm just standing there looking at it, and suddenly I hear this whistle. And all of a sudden, loads of people wearing blue overalls, and each one's carrying a hoe. They come walking out of the trees into the field, and they all take up positions. And they've all got this blank stare on their face, and they're all looking at me, and I'm like, holy shit, what is going on here? And it shocked me to such a point. I went and woke the driver up, and he came and had a look, and he said, holy Christ, it's like a scene out of a Hitchcock movie. Yeah, they were just stood there, and they've all got Wellington boots on, and they just started prodding the ground with their hoes and just standing there. Never seen anything like that in my life. Saw a guy got killed once on a train. That wasn't very nice. I think he stuck his head out a bit too far. I never saw it happen, but it was on the train I was on. Yes. So what other things come to mind? Can't think of anything at the moment. Of course, I am assuming that these files will not be corrupted. I'm sure they won't. So my 3-day Kratom hiatus was not planned at all. It just kind of happened. My supplier went to Bangkok, so I didn't have any access to it, and I've ordered online pretty much straight away, but that takes 3 days. So I'm expecting to get a delivery or 3 today. It's good to go without things for a while. But I don't know if I hold with this Kratom as addictive concept, because in the last 5 years, I've probably spent 5 days without Kratom. 3 of those days were when I went to do a visa in Laos. And 2 of those days were when I was sick and I just didn't drink any tea. So in 5 years, and now I've had 3 days just stopped. Like cold turkey. And apart from the restless leg syndrome, I had no feelings about it at all. Haven't wanted to drink any Kratom. No. when it comes, of course, I'll make it and drink it, but it's not been a big deal. So I don't see where all these people who say online that, oh, Tom's really addictive. I mean, I make strong tea, so high doses, you know. I'm a high dose user, 5-year daily user, and I stopped without any issues at all. So I don't hold with the addictive bit. So I'm trying to think of other strange moments. Okay, here's one. I was in England and I was hitchhiking somewhere in Gloucestershire or North Wales. And I was only about 18. Got my pack, you know, and this guy in a sports car, he'd be about 28, 30 years old, looked a bit like Scandinavian. He had blonde hair, quite a big dude. Very friendly, very nice, gets me in the car. And then, you know, starts telling me that, oh, he could take me there, but, you know, I told him where I wanted to go eventually. And he said, oh, well, you know, it'd be a good idea you spend the night at my place and I'll take you to the intersection in the morning. Hand on the knee and all that. And I looked at him and I thought, oh, okay. So I didn't really do anything and we ended up at his place. So he cooked me this nice steak and French fries. And he got me whiskey, you know, we're both drinking neat whiskey and he's trying to get me to drink a lot of it. And I know what's going on and I'm like, oh no. So while I'm about to eat, he says, I'll go and get things ready, you know, and winked at me and off he went to the bedroom. And I'm like, oh my God. And he got 2 Doberman dogs and we're in the kitchen and I'm sitting there, you know, with this food in front of me and the dogs are just looking at me, you know. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So my backpack was there. I hadn't taken anything out of it. So I cut the steak in half, threw a piece to each of the dogs, grabbed my backpack, went out the kitchen door and ran as fast as I could into the forest, away from the house. I don't think, well, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't have done that, but I wasn't into it, and he probably would have been okay, and you know, no big deal. But it was fight or flight, and I decided that flight was the best thing to do, and that's the only really time I ever really encountered anything dodgy when I was hitchhiking. Maybe I just got lucky, I don't know. But yeah, it was all good stuff. Oh look, Lucky's seen a white dog over there, but it's a long way away. My friend, one of my friends in England, he had a Datsun 240Z, little sports car, nice car, quite old. And every Friday night, him and I would drive in his Datsun down to Heathrow Airport, and we knew the back roads, and we'd park near the perimeter, and we'd climb over this fence. It was difficult to get over the fence, but we'd do it. And we'd have a bag of stuff with us, and we'd lay out a blanket, and we'd sit right at the end of one of the major runways. We'd sit there right at the end of it. And we'd do our mushrooms, you know, and we'd drink our beer or whatever, and we'd just sit there, and you'd just see these huge aircraft coming towards you with their lights on. You know, and then you got the sound and the rumble, and it would just leave the ground and go right over your head, and you'd be like, wow, the colours, the sound. And you'd just recover from that, and then there would be another one coming. And it just went on all night. So we loved it. We used to do this. And this particular day, 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd had enough, you know, okay. Climbed back over the fence, into the car, And we're going along the M4. We got back on the motorway and we're heading back towards where we live in, you know, Reading. And I looked over to him because he's driving, and I said, the car's on fire. There's flames coming out by the gearbox, by the gear stick. And he looked and he went, oh yeah, there is, isn't there? And he drove on for about 3 or 4 minutes without doing anything. And then he very slowly pulled over to the hard shoulder, stopped the car and said, look, let's get out. So he got out and I got out, and we just sat on the side of the road and watched the car burn. By the time the cops arrived in their Range Rover, it was really burning. The interior of the car was fully alight. And we were only about 12 feet away from it, just sat there looking at it. This cop's come over, he said, what are you doing? And my friend looks at him, he said, well, we're watching the car burn. The cop says, well, you can't do that. My friend, yes, we can. It's my car. I can sit and watch it burn if I want. And the guy just looked at us, you know. And then his friend came over. What's going on? Oh, they're just watching the car burn. So the car eventually got put out. The fire got put out, and I think the cops took us to the next intersection, and we hitched a lift home. You know, it was really a strange one, that was. Well, luck. What do you think? Should we go? We're at 42 minutes now. So that's all that really comes to mind at the moment. Just a few crazy situations that I've encountered and funny situations. So I'll sign off with that. It's me and Lucky saying goodbye until the next time. And wherever you are in the world, enjoy every passing moment.